This new bourbon is from the original independent blender of unique aged cask strength whiskey since 2013. They are, of course, Barrell Craft Spirits. This is their new Barrel Foundation Double Barrel Bourbon. The new release is a line extension of Barrel Foundation and the company's first non-cask strength bourbon. This one kind of surprised me. Come right back and hear about it. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, and help me keep climbing to 100,000 subscribers here in 2025. It's been had a little bit of a week off last week, had to travel for work, but now we're back, and I have a bunch of cool videos to do this week, so stay tuned. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is Barrell Craft Spirits' first non-cask strength blend and uses whiskeys from undisclosed distilleries in Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, and Tennessee. Now, to be exact, the back label states that this is an undisclosed blend of 7 bourbons. First, they have bourbons from Indiana that are 5, 6, and 9 years old, Maryland, 5 and 6 years old, Tennessee, which is 8 years old, and finally an 8-year-old Kentucky bourbon. Now, if you do the mash bill math, it comes out to 73% corn, 23% rye, and 4% malted barley. Now, the barrels used for secondary maturation were toasted, and the finishing time for all the varying bourbons were from 3 months up to 2 years to create the first batch. So they took all those different aged bourbons, double aged them in toasted casks, all at different times before blending them together to get this. I would imagine they used the toasted profile instead of just a straight up double oaked to kind of control that overwhelming oak note that you could get if you go a little bit too far with a double oak experience. Now, it's bottled at 100 proof, and best part, it retails for only $55 per 750 milliliter bottle, which is pretty low considering some of the other stuff that Barrell puts out. All right, let's get a pour. So it is pretty light for a double barrel bourbon. However, remember, it's toasted barrels instead of charred, so I don't think you're gonna get as much color off of that, but it does have a decent color. So let's dive in and see what we got. First thing I get is chocolate covered raisins. That's what I smell. It's like going to the movies and you open a fresh box of Raisinets. That's what it smells like to me. Does anybody eat Raisinets anymore? Is that a thing? I still see them when you go to the movies, so I would imagine it is still a thing. I'm not sure I'm getting like typical toasted bourbon flavors like marshmallow and graham cracker. I do get chocolate. There's a good amount of vanilla and caramel here. I do feel like there is a toasted vibe to this though. And as someone who isn't, I'm not gonna say I'm not crazy about toasted bourbons, but I'm just kind of, I don't know, maybe for the most part, I'm kind of over the whole trend. You know, and I don't drink them very often, so I feel like I could smell it a little bit. A little bit of honey here too. It's got a really nice nose. It's very delicate. It's not gonna blow you away, only 100 proof, but the flavors here are pretty good. So let's get a taste. Here we go, cheers. Definitely get the toasted oak. I think on the palate, I get more of the toasted marshmallow experience a little bit. It's like you left that marshmallow just a little bit too long on fire after it was, after you took it off of the fire. I don't know, I like leaving it on there for a little while, get that nice like char on the outside. I feel like I'm getting that a little bit in the bourbon. It's actually pretty light overall. It's very balanced. I think what Barrell always tries to achieve is a great balance, has a nice little spice on the back end. I do get that chocolate covered raisin on the mid palate as well, which, you know, matches the nose. I kind of like sometimes when the nose matches the palate. It's got a nice little mouthfeel too for 100 proof. So that sip was more chocolate, more caramel. It turned into more of like a caramel chocolate almond experience almost. Kind of get like that almond nuttiness in it. This is a surprisingly good bourbon. Now, when I say surprisingly, it's not that I think that Barrell makes bad whiskey by any means. I think they're actually amazing blenders at Barrell Craft Spirits. However, I think for what Barrell does, for me, seeing that this was their first non-cask strength whiskey, I feel like the price is right at $55. That's kind of a welcoming sight to the shelves, especially these days. But I think for me, when you read the blending components, you're kind of like, man, you know, how is this all going to work together? But it actually really works well, and I think that's the thing that I'm most surprised about. So on that sip, I got a little bit of a brightness to it, almost like a coconut type note to it. This thing is, it's a really interesting double barrel bourbon. Again, I think using the toasted casks really do help rather than just double oaking it. I like the fact that it kind of changes every time I go back a little bit. You know, I was mentioning how the nose maybe matches the palate, and I think initially it does, but as you sip it, I think you get more caramel sometimes, more marshmallow. That sip, I got a little bit of a coconut vibe to it. This thing, I think with all the different components and the toasted attributes that it has, I think actually makes it a little bit more interesting. All right, last sip here. Yeah, I would classify this as more of a toasted profile than a deep, rich double oak profile. However, I do really like this. I love the price point of this. Yeah, as I said, this thing really surprised me. All right, let's go to a quick final breakdown. All right, final breakdown for the Barrell Craft Spirits Double Barrel Bourbon Foundation. Price for this one, $55. Resale market value, you're not gonna see these on resale, especially at 100 proof, and you don't really see a lot of Barrell Craft Spirit stuff on the resale market. As far as availability, I think this one's gonna be above average. I think Barrell Craft Spirits does have good distribution, especially all around the country. So I feel like you'll have a good shot of finding this. You know, Barrell Craft Spirit stuff usually kind of sits around, so I think a lot of people will have a good chance of finding this one once it gets out to all the markets. Value here, I'm gonna say, is even. I think at $55, it kind of teeters right on where Old Forester 1910 is at. It's close to Woodford Double Oak pricing as well. And overall, I think the price is exactly where it should be. Most I'd pay here is gonna be retail, and as far as alternatives go, I mean, it's really just the ones that I had mentioned. So if you're thinking I wanna put it against 1910 or even Fox and Odin Double Oak, which is one of my favorite new double oaks, I think this one's a little bit different. I think it leans more towards a toasted profile. Now, I do think this has more going on than the Elijah Craig Toasted, but Elijah Craig Toasted is a good alternative to this one. I would still throw Woodford Reserve Double Oaked in the mix on this one, and also, even though it's a rye, I would put Sagamore Double Oaked in here. I think Sagamore Double Oaked has a great profile, even though it's a little bit more spice. I think can probably go head to head with this. Also a great alternative to this one as well. Now, for recommendation is to skip a try before you buy, or a buy and back it up. I think this is good enough to be a buy. For 55 bucks, I think this is a really nice addition to the shelf. I think Barrell Craft Spirits did exactly what they do with this release. They balance it out really well. You got a lot of different flavors going on the palate. Every time I go back to it, I feel like I get something a little bit different. It could open up and get really good. It could open up and change a little bit more. We'll have to see how that goes in the long run. But I'd be curious to see how this actually does go against a Fox and Odin, a Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, an Old Forester 1910, and some of those other popular double oak bourbons on the market. In fact, I'll probably be doing a quadruple base this week. I know I've been a little late on getting those out, especially on Friday, so I think that's gonna be my first one of 2025. But as far as a buy, I like the price here. I think it's a kind of a sneaky, really good whiskey if people wanna try something new. And again, if you like toasted bourbons, rather than, if you're thinking this is gonna be a high proof double oaked product, it's really not gonna bring that heaviness that a lot of people liked in some double oak products. Now, if you lean more towards a toasted profile, I think this will kind of go down along that path, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. It's a good release for Barrell Craft Spirits and a good price, so cheers to that. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this review for the new Barrell Craft Spirits Double Barrel Bourbon Foundation. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button, and if you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments what you think about it, what you think about the price. Is it still too steep of a price that you would pay? And if you have any other suggestions for me to put it up against in the quadruple base I'm gonna film here this week, let me know what you think. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers, and I'll see you next time right here on The Master and Drum. Cheers, folks.